enter the world alone. We leave the world alone. But in the arc of life between birth and death, we are seldom alone. We belong to groups. Groups which organize and sustain our cultures and integrate us into our societies. Family and kinship groups are all that are needed in some cultures, but larger societies need additional groups. Some of these additional groups are based on age. Some on the common interests shared by certain individuals. And still others result from the unequal distribution of wealth, status, and power. All are important to anthropologists who study how these different groups provide stability or integrate change into a culture. The Massai are cattle herders who live on the plains of East Africa. They believe that when God created the earth, he didn't have time to keep cattle, so he asked the Massai to do his herding for him. And so for centuries, the Massai have been semi-nomadic pastoralists whose life is sustained by the cattle God gave them. Massai society is structured by the need to sustain and protect the herd. Defense of the herd and the stability of the group are maintained in part by strong male bonds organized in age sets. Boys are initiated together and move through stages of the life cycle together. Each Massai male progresses through life in a series of 3 stages. First as a herder. Then as a warrior. And finally, as an elder. These men are part of the ruling elders of the Massai. They are on their way to a meeting where important decisions will be made about an upcoming ceremony. The elders provide leadership. They own cattle, and they make decisions concerning the welfare of the group, including marriage arrangements and other transactions involving a transfer of cattle. Strong male bonding begins in childhood. Between the ages of 6 and 8, Massai boys are separated from their families. Living together, they act as herdsmen, charged with cleaning, feeding, and watering the cows. In the search for water, the boys must sometimes herd the cattle more than 20 miles a day. The boys act together to protect the cows from grass fires and other dangers. All their activities promote an atmosphere of cooperation and camaraderie that is expected to last a lifetime. When the herdsmen are older, sometime between the ages of 12 and 14, they will be circumcised together and become Moran, the warriors and protectors of their people and cattle. Here the Moran of one tribe compete against the Moran of a neighboring tribe in a ritualized battle, honing their warrior skills. Moran live apart as a group in a hidden training compound called the Opool. Together they build their residence away from the main village and carefully camouflage it. In the Opool, everything is done together. The Moran perform the domestic chores traditionally done by women, for they must remain bachelors while they serve a full 7 years as warriors. This reduces competition with the elders for eligible women. The Moran help braid and decorate each other's hair. In the Massai culture, only the Moran are allowed long hair. It is considered a mark of bravery and distinction. When the Moran are ready to be ruling elders, their heads are shaved by their mothers, a rite of passage symbolizing their new status in the tribe. But before this, the Moran must go through a purification ceremony. They drink the blood of a specially sacrificed cow. The blood will strengthen them spiritually and physically. Undergoing such a rite of passage together further reinforces their common values and group solidarity. Age sets among the Massai provide a formal means of organizing the essential tasks of protecting and governing the society. There are other less formal ways of promoting group solidarity.
Charlie Mitchell, and we're all at the Blue Goose, and they are in Northport, Maine. Here about 4 miles south of Belfast on Route 1.
These are New England contra dancers. They get together to practice traditional line dances and socialize with people who have similar interests.
It's not uncommon for people to come 60, 65 miles dance. We have people up from Southwest Harbor, people down from Dexa.
These contra dancers make up what anthropologists call a common interest association, a group of people who come together to participate in a specific activity or to work for a specific purpose.
I come here once a year to celebrate my birthday.
I used to come 30 years ago, and I didn't come for years and years and years. And I came back about 2 years ago, and I couldn't believe it. It took me right back into the music was the same policeman taking tickets.
I suppose that we're probably the only ones left around here anyway that is doing the same thing. We just stick to the old music, and I suppose there's some nostalgia in coming here for some people. There is to me. I like the old tunes. When I first come here, it wasn't much, really just a shell. It was, that's the way they built dance halls back in those days, was put in a good floor and just enough building to keep people dry.
When I came when I was quite young, it's a lot different. It was like a barn. The music, Donnie Spear, he's been here for years and years. And the compound there, he goes with the building, Eddie. When I was in my 20s, I was coming here, and Eddie was always here.
Yeah, milk's kind of bad, isn't it?
Well, yes, but you're getting by. Yeah. Well, it used to be kind of wild down here years and years ago when it first started, Yeah, we kind of kind of wild, but late years, you know. Yeah, I arrested 8 one down there all alone one night. Took them up the Belfast. But that was a long while ago. It's all just like an old family here now, you know.
This is my sister-in-law. She's married to the guy that plays the sax.
And I survived it for 40 years.
Yeah, even while he was learning. You know.
I felt like running away back then. Did I ever tell you about it?
You know, the reason that he plays is all the people in the neighborhood bought instruments for their children, and nobody played, so the old folks picked it up and they decided to take lessons.
Only been here how long?
25 years.
25, 26, somewhere in there. Somewhere between 24 and 28, and nobody can figure it out.
Will you swing in the center, please?
A common interest association is not based on sex, age, kinship, marriage, or territory. It is voluntary. It results from an act of joining.
Will you join 4 hands across and down the hall? Will you turn as 4 and come back? Ladies, cross over and cross back.
Well, see, this is the only dance, our style is the only one around we play. We cater to
It is
older
the only
people.
one, as far as I know. The rest of them are either bottle clubs or some place where they have a different outfit every Saturday
Well,
night.
there's no drinking in here. They bring the children. You see 2 or 3-year-old ones. In the,
If
you
people
might,
want
in
them,
the
they can
80s.
bring their kids, and they don't
Their
have to
80s,
worry
they'll be
about
in their
them.
80s here. Well, now, there's nothing to prevent them from slipping out the car. Well, they can go in the car.
They do go to the car, but you don't see anybody. You don't see anybody in here that would look like they'd been to the car too many times, do you? This is a policy that they started here a long, long time ago, and it's worked very nicely.
That's why anybody can
That's
come
why
here.
there's no trouble here. That's why the cop here doesn't have too much to do except sell tickets.
Common interest associations have helped enrich and organize society for thousands of years. They still serve select functions in traditional cultures today. And in urban industrial societies, their diversity is remarkable. Some cut across ethnic, age, gender, and regional ties. Some are reinforced by such ties. Some help to preserve cultures, others to change them. These retired sleeping car porters continued to meet long after the era of Pullman railroad cars ended. They are the last of a long line of porters that span 100 years of American history. The Common Interest Association they formed helped to change the nature of the society we live in today. In August of 1925, at an Elks Lodge in Harlem, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters was launched with 500 members and the help of the black union advocate Philip A. Randolph. One of their chief aims was to improve the working conditions of the porter. They called their job Miles of Smiles. Their welcoming smiles were actually required in their work. In the 1920s, it was about the best job a black man in the United States could get, and the Pullman Company knew it.
You had to be so careful because anybody got on the train then, Just wrote you up, say you didn't shine his shoes, or you didn't brush him off when he got on, or he didn't like your attitude, or you didn't smile when you spoke to him. He called you in and dressed you down and put you in the streets probably for 10 days. Now, you didn't miss a whole lot of money because they won't pay you nothing now.
In those days, only a few blacks were accepted into white unions, and there were no black unions. For 12 years, members of the Brotherhood struggled for a union, jeopardizing their jobs, holding secret meetings, negotiating with the government. United by their common interest, the Brotherhood finally won. The Pullman Company capitulated, and the first contract between a U.S. corporation and a black union was signed. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters went on to fight for the rights of all blacks.
I want it to be known that the humble Pullman porter, the man who had been kicked around and shoved around and worked without adequate pay, was the man that stimulated and worked for and fought for this boycott in Montgomery.
Transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream.
It was Porter E.D. Nixon who organized the famous Montgomery bus boycott that launched the modern civil rights movement. It was Nixon, too, who recruited Martin Luther King, whose name became synonymous with the movement.
Of that character. I have a dream.
I was able to make a contribution solely because we had the Brotherhood, and I wasn't afraid.
The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters changed history and affected countless people outside their own group. Other common interest associations help people adapt and cope in other ways. Some of these groups may come into conflict with mainstream society. Being part of a group like the Young Skulls gang in the Bronx area of New York provides a sense of power and identity that these teenagers can rarely find on their own. It can give them a feeling of pride and belonging and provides important support where family and other social institutions may have failed them. Like most common interest associations, the Young Skulls have their own values, rules, and internal organization. This member has challenged the hierarchy, and he will be punished.
I never know the skull to get on punishment. You have sold your soul to the devil. But this is the devil, and we are his demons. So you in hell now, and you must worship. And you gonna burn. And he must worship.
The leadership of the gang is reasserted in this ritualized beating, assuring the continued solidarity of the group. Sometimes members join willingly. Other times they join because they fear the consequences of not doing so.
Get out.
There is strength in numbers. Their antisocial acts may reflect their deep frustration, their perception that they lack the possessions and opportunities that many others have. Like the Porters, members of the Young Skulls gang are part of the lower class of their society. They are bonded not only by common interest, but by their economic status as well. Groups based on class reflect social stratification in a culture. Like age sets and common interest associations, Class stratification is another way in which people may be organized within societies. In many stratified societies, one's status is largely determined at birth. But in the United States, membership in a class can be either acquired at birth or achieved. This family did some of both, and now lives on an island of comfort off the East Coast. One of the changing luxuries of the upper class is the ability to hire servants.
Fewer people can afford to have them, for one thing, because of inflation, and the pay is astronomical. It goes up all the time, right along with inflation. This has made, as you can imagine, a great difference in American life and European life, too, because really, for the first time in history, there haven't been servants, and you know everybody had servants excepting the bitterly poor. Everybody. So that this puts a tremendous burden on the woman in the family now, being so tied down, the kitchen, the house, the children. This sort of thing never was. There were more people who considered it a perfectly proper job to have. Americans never really have thought so, because every American's brought up to think he can be president. So that a servant class has never grown up in America. But in Europe, where you had your classes much more distinct, a lower class person would never expect to be anything but a lower class person.
In many European countries, one's social status, inherited by birth, is a significant indicator of class. In the United States, wealth is a more important barometer of class. In South Africa, whether one was born white or black made all the difference. Until the election of its first black president in 1994, whites controlled both the political and economic system. South Africa is a nation created by European colonialists. Under a system known as apartheid, blacks could not own property in most of the country. They couldn't marry whites and were not allowed to vote. Nelson Mandela, South Africa's first black president, inherited a system in which whites, who made up only 13% of the population, controlled 86% of the country's land and more than 90% of its wealth. This woman works as a servant in the suburbs of Johannesburg to pay for the education of her daughter, who must live hundreds of miles away. Her only son died of malnutrition. Like a number of other countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, South Africa is attempting to reverse the effects of centuries of colonialism, domination by an outside government. India is a modern nation that has experienced stratification both from without and within. Until it achieved independence in 1947, the region was dominated by Britain. British colonial governors imposed their authority onto a social system organized around caste. India's system of caste, in which one's status is determined by birth, is based on religious, economic, and other social factors. In India, the dominant religion is Hinduism. Hindus believe that one's caste is determined by one's moral conduct in a previous life. The idea that one is reborn in human or animal form after death is reincarnation. At birth, one inherits the caste, the occupation, position, and status of one's family. At the top of the social system is the Brahmin, or priestly caste. Next is the military caste, then the merchant and industrial caste. At the very bottom of the social system are the untouchables. While a Brahmin priest purifies himself for a religious ritual, a member of the untouchable caste does the unclean work of preparing the site. A Brahmin may not actually be richer than members of lower castes, but he will always be accorded more respect because it is believed he has earned his status through good behavior in previous lives. The caste system was outlawed as a basis for legal discrimination in India, but it still provides a framework for social and economic distinctions. Though the Indian caste system may seem extreme or unjust to people accustomed to the idea of upward mobility, in reality, all stratified societies, including the United States, are organized around some form of inequity. Groups formed on the basis of age, common interest, or stratification provide much of the structure of a society and reflect the values of a culture. We are all members of various types of groups, and even in a system that values individuality and self-reliance, none of us is ever entirely alone.
And a crow hop out and swings a little bird. And on you go in circle 6 and don't get mixed. Pretty indication, shut the door and 5 hands round.